Someone is deeply and almost uncontrollably in love with you. The reason behind this feeling may surprise you more than it makes you happy, because it has very little to do with the person you believe yourself to be. The truth is that it is connected to something you unknowingly awakened inside them without making any deliberate effort. Once you genuinely understand this, you may find it difficult to ignore or simply forget what is taking place between you and this person. You may have always believed that love develops through attraction, shared beliefs, common goals, or simply meeting at the perfect moment. That explanation feels reassuring because it is straightforward and easy for the mind to accept. But sometimes, what feels comfortable can conceal a deeper reality that exists underneath human emotions. The mind naturally avoids things that seem complicated, mysterious, or difficult to explain. It prefers simple explanations and logical answers. Yet the strongest forms of love are not always created through conscious thoughts or careful choices. The deepest emotional connections can begin within hidden areas of the mind, in places where feelings, memories, desires, fears, and unconscious patterns exist beyond normal awareness. If you want to understand the deeper reasons someone has become so intensely attached to you, take a moment and engage with this message. Because what you are about to discover goes far beyond ordinary attraction. Without consciously realizing it, you entered a hidden space within their mind that they had protected and avoided for many years. The reality is that you did not simply make them feel happy, excited, or comfortable. You touched something much deeper. You gave them the rare experience of feeling completely seen and understood. And sometimes that experience can feel almost frightening, because when someone truly sees you, the parts of yourself you have hidden from everyone else can no longer remain completely invisible. This is where everything begins to become more complicated. When someone feels recognized on a level deeper than an ordinary conversation, they do not simply develop a casual interest. Something stronger starts developing within them. They become emotionally connected in ways that even they may not completely understand. Many people misunderstand what love actually means. They assume being loved simply means another person enjoys being around you, appreciates your personality, or likes the way you make them feel. But powerful emotional connections can reach much deeper than simple admiration. You created a moment of inner recognition within them. You became connected to a part of their mind that they had ignored, hidden, or pushed away for a very long time. Through your presence, they began noticing emotions and desires that they had buried underneath the routine of everyday life. Somehow, without deliberately trying, you became a reflection for them. You became a mirror that revealed something about themselves they had not yet been prepared to see. This did not happen because you performed perfectly or because you tried to transform yourself into someone impressive. It happened because your presence represented something unexpected, something their mind could not easily explain. That unexpected connection disturbed the balance of their inner world. Over time, their mind had created certain forms of protection. It had learned how to conceal particular emotions, control certain desires, and avoid facing certain truths that felt too vulnerable. Then you appeared, and those emotional defenses began to weaken. The walls they had built around themselves started to develop cracks. This is why their feelings toward you may not always seem simple or predictable. Their emotions are not made up only of affection. They may also contain longing, uncertainty, fear, imagination, personal meaning, and an intense emotional attachment that feels almost impossible to control. You did not attract them only through your personality or through the things you did. You awakened something within them. And whenever something powerful becomes awakened in the unconscious mind, it can feel like destiny, fate, or something much larger than ordinary life. You may not have noticed this before, but you did not follow some perfect formula. You did not say magical words or behave according to a special pattern designed to make them attached to you. Instead, You became different from what they expected. You interrupted their usual way of thinking, and that difference captured their attention. The human mind depends greatly on familiarity. It feels comfortable with what it already recognizes. But when something unusual appears, something that cannot easily be categorized or explained, the mind naturally becomes focused on it. You became unpredictable in a way that did not feel meaningless. Instead, you felt significant. To them, your presence may have carried a deeper symbol. They may have started seeing you as representing something that goes beyond your actual identity. You became connected to an answer they had been searching for without even knowing the exact question. You filled an emotional space within them that they could feel but had never been able to properly explain. You touched an emptiness they had learned to ignore. And once this process begins, they do not simply fall in love with you in the ordinary sense. They become attached to what you represent inside their personal world. This is why walking away can become extremely difficult. Leaving you would not only mean losing another person, it could also mean confronting hidden parts of themselves that became alive because of this connection. And the mind often tries to avoid that kind of confrontation. It protects itself from uncomfortable truths. So even when they feel confused, even when the situation becomes painful, and even when their actions do not appear logical, they may continue holding on. Here is something even deeper that may completely change the way you view this connection. You did not only awaken beautiful emotions within them, you may also have brought forward emotions that feel difficult, unstable, or overwhelming. Hidden emotions rarely emerge in a perfectly calm and controlled manner. When feelings that have been buried for years finally rise toward the surface, they often arrive with intensity. They can influence how someone interprets situations, affect their judgment, and make emotions feel stronger than the reality surrounding them. You may already notice this through small signs. There may be an unusual intensity in the way they look at you. There may be a different kind of energy whenever they are around you. The way they communicate, respond, or react may carry a quiet emotional weight. Sometimes, even without speaking, you can sense that something meaningful is happening between you. There is a feeling of importance that seems to exist beyond ordinary words. What makes this even more complicated is that they may not completely understand their own emotions. This process is not happening only through conscious thinking. It is occurring beneath the surface, within a deeper psychological space where ordinary logic does not always determine the outcome. Within that hidden place, opposite emotions can exist at the same time. Love and fear can appear together. Desire and hesitation can stand side by side. This is why their behavior may sometimes feel confusing or difficult to understand. One moment, they may seem completely drawn toward you. They may show strong interest, attention, and emotional closeness. Then suddenly, they may create distance or become quiet, but that change does not automatically mean their feelings have disappeared. Sometimes the distance happens because their inner defenses become active. A part of them recognizes the intensity of the connection and becomes afraid of what that intensity might mean. The emotional struggle inside them can create a repeating pattern. Attraction moves forward, and then fear follows behind. Closeness appears, and then suddenly space is created. Deep emotion rises, and then uncertainty takes control. Without even realizing it, you may become part of this emotional cycle. You may feel the powerful effect of this connection because while they are experiencing an internal transformation, you are also being affected by the emotional energy existing between you. There was likely a specific moment when something inside them recognized you, a moment when their unconscious mind connected with something you represented. After that point, returning to the way things were before became almost impossible. That recognition was not based only on appearance, personality, or surface-level qualities. It was connected to a deeper meaning. You represented something their unconscious mind had been searching for, something they needed, feared, and desired all at the same time. Until you understand this, it can be difficult to explain why they struggle to let go of you. It can be difficult to understand why this connection feels so powerful, complicated, and unlike anything they have experienced before. If you want to discover what you unknowingly awakened inside them, write yes. Because the truth is, you did not simply make them fall in love with you. You awakened a hidden part of themselves that had been waiting to be recognized. You became connected to a deeper emotional reality that they could no longer completely ignore. And that is why this connection feels stronger than ordinary attraction. You awakened a hidden force inside them, a powerful inner energy they had kept buried and controlled for many years. Something that now refuses to remain quiet any longer. They tried again and again to convince themselves that it was only a temporary fascination, a passing emotion that would eventually disappear with enough time. They believed that distance, distractions, and the natural movement of life would slowly erase what they were feeling. But instead of disappearing, those emotions became stronger, deeper, and increasingly difficult for them to ignore. This connection does not exist simply because of physical attraction or a temporary interest. It reaches into something much deeper, something connected to hidden layers of the unconscious mind. The unconscious does not simply forget desires, emotions, memories, or unfinished experiences. It keeps them stored away, silently waiting for the right person, the right moment, or the right reflection to bring them back into awareness. You entered their life almost like a psychological key that unlocked a door they had kept closed for a very long time. Through you, emotions they had spent years avoiding suddenly found a path back to the surface. This awakening creates a quiet tension inside them because the unconscious does not ask for permission before revealing what has been hidden. It does not wait for logic, approval, or careful planning. It moves underneath the surface, influencing thoughts, reactions, and decisions in ways they may not completely understand. From the outside, their behavior may appear calm, controlled, or even distant. But underneath that calm appearance, there can be a constant emotional movement that they struggle to manage. Obsession does not always appear through dramatic actions. Sometimes it develops quietly through endless thoughts, repeated memories, and constant mental attention. They replay conversations with you again and again. They remember small details, particular words, moments, expressions, and feelings that other people might consider insignificant. They revisit those experiences in their mind, not necessarily because they consciously choose to, but because something inside them keeps returning to those memories. Trying to stop thinking about you can feel almost impossible, because their mind has connected you with something emotionally significant. You have become connected to an unfinished psychological pattern within their deeper self. You represent something meaningful that they may have lost, something they never received, or something they secretly believed they were not worthy of experiencing. Your presence reminds them of a part of themselves they had ignored, forgotten, or abandoned. And this is where the depth of the connection becomes easier to understand. Sometimes, a person does not become attached only to another individual. They become attached to the version of themselves that they experience in that person's presence. When they are around you, they may feel something they rarely feel anywhere else. They may feel more open, more alive, more understood, or more connected to emotions they had previously kept hidden. That experience can become incredibly powerful because it is no longer simply about another person. It becomes about identity, memory, desire, and the possibility of becoming someone different. This is why their feelings may continue even when they try to suppress them. They can tell themselves to move forward, they can create distance, they can become distracted by work, friends, responsibilities, or other parts of life. Yet a meaningful emotional connection can remain quietly active beneath all of those distractions. The mind may continue bringing back certain memories because those memories have become emotionally connected to something unfinished. A conversation may seem ordinary to you while carrying enormous meaning for them. A simple look may remain in their memory. A particular sentence may return unexpectedly. A small moment that you barely remember may have become something they repeatedly revisit. This does not necessarily mean that every thought or feeling they experience is conscious or intentional. Much of what happens emotionally takes place beneath awareness. That is why someone can sometimes behave as though they have completely moved on while still carrying a strong internal attachment. They may appear unaffected. They may seem distant. They may even attempt to convince themselves that the connection was not important. But the unconscious mind does not always follow the story that the conscious mind creates. When something meaningful has been awakened, the mind may continue processing it long after the external interaction has ended. This is also why emotional connections can sometimes feel strangely familiar. A person may feel as though they have known someone much longer than they actually have. There can be a sense of recognition that seems difficult to explain through ordinary circumstances. It may feel as though the person has somehow reached a hidden part of them. Whether you describe that experience through psychology, emotional attachment, or the language of the unconscious, the experience itself can feel incredibly real. And if you have noticed unusual changes in the way this person behaves around you, do not immediately assume that every change has a simple explanation. Sometimes, increased attention can come from curiosity. Sometimes, distance can come from uncertainty. Sometimes, intense emotion can make a person behave inconsistently because they are trying to understand something they have never experienced in quite the same way before. The important thing is to observe patterns rather than relying on a single moment. Notice whether their actions consistently show care, respect, honesty, and genuine interest. Words and intense emotions can be powerful, but behavior over time often provides clearer information. A deep connection should not require you to abandon your self-respect, your boundaries, or your sense of reality. If someone truly values you, that value should eventually become visible through their choices and actions, not only through intense feelings or confusing signals. And perhaps this is one of the most important things to understand about being deeply desired by someone. You do not have to become smaller, louder, more mysterious, or more perfect in order to maintain another person's interest. You do not have to perform a certain role to remain significant in someone's mind. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply remain yourself while allowing another person to decide what they genuinely want. Your value does not depend on whether someone is obsessively thinking about you. Your worth existed before their attention and will continue to exist regardless of what they choose. The deeper lesson is not simply that someone may be deeply attached to you. The deeper lesson is that meaningful connections can reveal parts of ourselves that were previously hidden. Sometimes, another person becomes a mirror. They show us our own needs, fears, hopes, wounds, and desires. And sometimes, what feels like an overwhelming connection is an invitation to understand yourself more deeply. You may have awakened something inside them, but they are still responsible for understanding and managing what they feel. You are not responsible for carrying their emotional world for them. You can care about someone without becoming responsible for their healing. You can recognize a powerful connection without assuming that every intense feeling means the relationship is destined to last forever. This distinction matters because intensity and compatibility are not always the same thing. A connection can feel extraordinary and still require patience, honesty, boundaries, and mutual effort. The healthiest form of love is not simply the strongest emotion. It is also the ability to communicate clearly, respect boundaries, accept reality, and choose each other through consistent actions. So if someone seems deeply affected by your presence, Remember that what they experience may be connected to something much deeper within themselves. You may have touched a part of their inner world that had been quiet for years. You may have reminded them of something they had forgotten. You may have reflected qualities they secretly wanted to discover within themselves. And that is why the connection can feel so difficult for them to explain. Sometimes, the person who awakens something within us does not realize the depth of what they have triggered. They may never fully understand why certain memories remain, why certain emotions return, or why their mind continues moving back toward the same person. But you do not need to force an explanation. You do not need to chase answers from them. You do not need to convince them that the connection is real. Allow their actions to reveal what their words cannot. Allow time to show what is temporary and what is genuine. And most importantly, continue protecting the part of yourself that existed before this connection ever appeared. Because if this person truly has awakened something meaningful within you as well, then the purpose of the connection may not simply be to make you feel wanted. It may be to help you understand yourself more deeply. It may be to reveal what you need from love, what you will no longer accept, what kind of emotional connection feels healthy to you, and what kind of person you want to become. Sometimes another person enters our life and becomes a mirror without ever intending to. They show us what we have been missing. They reveal what we have been avoiding. They awaken emotions we thought had disappeared. And they can make us question parts of ourselves we had stopped examining. That is why powerful connections can feel both beautiful and unsettling. They can bring warmth and uncertainty at the same time. They can create hope while also forcing us to confront fears. They can make someone feel deeply alive while simultaneously making them afraid of losing control. So if you sense that someone is struggling to understand why they feel so strongly about you, remember that the answer may not exist entirely on the surface. It may be connected to something they discovered within themselves when they encountered you. Perhaps you gave them a glimpse of a version of themselves they had forgotten. Perhaps you made them feel understood in a way they had rarely experienced. Perhaps your presence reminded them of an emotional need they had spent years ignoring. Whatever the reason, you do not need to force the situation into a particular outcome. Let the connection reveal itself naturally. Let consistency speak. Let respect speak. Let honesty speak. And if this person truly feels something profound, they will eventually have to confront that feeling honestly, rather than simply allowing it to control them. Because real love is not only about being unable to stop thinking about someone. Real love also requires the courage to understand what you feel, the maturity to communicate it, and the willingness to treat the other person with care. That is where a powerful emotional connection becomes something more meaningful. It stops being only an overwhelming feeling and becomes a conscious choice. And perhaps that is the real reason this person cannot easily forget you. You did not simply capture their attention. You awakened something within them that had been waiting to be noticed. You became a mirror. You became a reminder. You became connected to a part of their inner world that they had spent years keeping hidden. And once something inside a person has been brought into awareness, it becomes very difficult to pretend that it was never there. That may be why they continue remembering you. That may be why certain moments remain unusually vivid. That may be why distance does not automatically erase the emotional significance of what happened. But remember, their inner journey belongs to them. Your journey belongs to you. You can appreciate what a connection has awakened without losing yourself inside another person's emotions. You can recognize that someone may feel deeply for you while still requiring them to show that feeling through healthy, respectful, consistent behavior. And if they truly love you, they will not only want access to your presence, they will want to understand you, respect you, support you, and meet you with honesty. That is the difference between being emotionally captivated by someone and genuinely loving them. One can exist entirely inside the mind. The other eventually becomes visible through actions. So perhaps the most powerful thing you awakened was not simply love. Perhaps you awakened awareness. You made them notice something they had been unable or unwilling to see before. And whether this connection ultimately becomes a relationship, a lesson, a transformation, or simply a meaningful chapter in both of your lives, its significance does not have to be measured only by whether someone stays. Sometimes, a person enters your life to awaken something. Sometimes, you enter theirs for the same reason. And sometimes, the deepest connections are not the ones that give us the easiest answers. They are the ones that force us to ask better questions about who we are, what we need, what we desire, and what we are willing to accept. If someone is deeply in love with you because you awaken something within them, then allow that realization to remind you of something equally important. You do not have to chase what is meant to meet you halfway. You do not have to prove your worth. You do not have to compete for someone's attention. You do not have to manipulate their emotions. Simply remain grounded in who you are. If the connection is genuine, let it develop through mutual effort. If their feelings are real, let them demonstrate those feelings through consistent behavior. And if the connection has awakened something valuable within you, do not ignore that lesson simply because the other person may or may not remain. Sometimes, the greatest gift of a powerful connection is not receiving another person. Sometimes, it is finally discovering another part of yourself.